Okay, the next thing we're going to do is put in these ESP headers. So we need 15 female headers altogether in each of these spots. You should have enough to do that and maybe one or two more. So what I like to do on these is count my pins over and then just kind of mark where I need to cut. So I'm going to do that, and you want to make sure that you're careful. So I've gone ahead and marked my 15th pin with a Sharpie, so I kind of know where I need to be. So now I'm going to take my flush cutters, and I'm going to look at that. I'm going to go ahead and cut one pin past that one. So hopefully you can see that. I'm going to try to be pretty precise on this, and cut it pretty close to that extra pin. So there you go. So as you can see, I accidentally cut that pin, and that's why you want to use that one. So you can trim that up if you like, but you don't really need to. The important thing is that you have all your pins in here. So you can see all the pins are there. They're all going to make contact. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to count over 15, I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to cut the one next to it. Okay, same process. So I've counted my 15, and now I'm going to cut the pin right next to it. I'm going to cut somewhat close to it. So here's my 15th pin, and then my next one over I'm cutting next to it. Okay, pretty much the same thing, all right. That's what I wanted. So now I've got the pin headers set in there, and what you probably want to do is it's recommended to put your ESP in there just when you solder it. That way it won't deform it as easily. So I've got the ESP setting in there. I'm going to flip it over, and that also helps hold it where I can hold it down. Before you start soldering, also make sure your ESP is fully seated in these pins here. It's just going to make it easier. You're basically just going to work your way. I'm right-handed primarily, so I'm going to work my way from left to right on the top, and then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. And this is pretty straightforward. It's really the same process as what you used before for all the resistors. These are a little bit smaller pads, so they should go a little bit quicker. You don't really need to put as much heat on them. So you can see these are going pretty quick. And while you're going along, just make sure that you don't get any solder bridges. And you also want to make sure that you can't see any of the copper. So those are looking pretty good. You want the mini volcanoes even on this part. And you also don't want to put too much solder because it can bridge up underneath on the other side. And you don't want that. It'll melt the plastic and be kind of nasty. Okay, so those headers are done. Okay, everything, so now those headers are not going to come out. Now the nice thing is the ESP is still going to come out. So you can remove that and use it for a different project if you want. And it should go in just as easily as it came out. So there you have it. One other thing I'll mention is that you may want to use painter's tape to hold it in there if you're not able to hold it down. So in my case, I had something I could prop it on, but you may not have that. So you can use some painter's tape just to hold it and keep it secure, because you really don't want these female headers popping out. You want them to stay nice and put. So inspect the bottom. Make sure that you don't have any that are not the little volcanoes, either too much or too little. Mine look pretty good, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, here I've got the TFT display. The first thing you need to do is make sure your pins, your male pins are in. Mine were already in. Yours may not be. If they're not, just make sure you orient them so the long part of the pin is on the bottom. You're just going to put these in and then you're going to solder them on the top side like you see here. Same with this side. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get some more pin headers, and then we're going to put them, we need to have 5 here, and we need to have, looks like 9 here, 3, 6, 9, yep. So do the same technique I showed earlier, where you mark the pin that you're going to cut, and then you move over one pin and cut right next to that. That's the best way to do it. Okay, so I marked my 9th pin. I'm going to do that one first. I'm going to come in, take my flush cutters, I'm going to go right to the next pin. I'm going to go close to that pin, and then I'm just going to cut it. There we go. Okay, so once you do that, it's the same process. Just want to make sure you got 9 pins, which I do, which is good. Okay, so for the 5 pins, I've done the same thing. I've marked pin number 5, and I'm going to cut it right next to the 6th pin in this case. And these things do like to fly on you. So, okay. Now I've got the pins how I want them. So I'm going to put them in there. Doesn't really matter which way you put them in, as long as you got the right number of pins. And then I'm going to insert the TFT module. Okay, so I've got those in. I'm going to flip it, prop it up, and I'm going to go ahead and solder it just like I did before. So same drill. It doesn't really matter which side you start on. Just be careful as you go along. You don't want any solder bridges. If you do get them, just use the solder sucker or the solder wick. Or just use your solder iron depending on how much solder is there. Those are done. I'm gonna do this side. And just inspect them real good. Make sure you've got the little mini volcanoes. If you see any that needs a little more solder or a little less, then just adjust as needed. I think that's pretty good. Okay. All right. Make sure that things aren't riding up and they're nice and flush. Okay, on this one you can see it's a little higher right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it and I'm going to just kind of adjust it. Push it in with my finger. Doesn't really matter, but it's just more aesthetics. So you just want to kind of push that down. And you have to heat them up pretty quickly to be able to move it because there's a lot of pins. Okay, so I've got that how I want it. I can do the same thing on this side, but I don't need to because it's all good. Okay, so now that screen is good to go. All right, we're almost done. So the only other thing that we need to do is going to be the battery and these I2C pins. So you should have in your bag or in your kit. These are nice because you can use them for future expansion, maybe sensors, something like that that can use the I2C bus or I2C. So there should be 4 pins. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the small side of the pin in, and then you're going to solder it in. So this may actually be a good idea to do before. I'm going to take this out. You're going to insert those in, and then you're just going to solder them up. All right, so those are in now. And the only other thing left is the battery. So we're going to pop the battery in. This is very important. Inside the battery case, you're going to see a minus and a plus. Just match those up on the board. So you see a plus and a minus here, minus and a plus. Those need to be correct, or you're going to have problems. So these are just going to fit right in. And you flip it upside down. And I would probably recommend propping this up a little bit so it's nice and flush. And you're going to have a little bit of an overhang, which isn't a problem. We're probably going to have we might have some kind of 3D printed case for this, for the back. We'll see. Okay, there's a little bit more solder required here. All right, and that's pretty much all there is to it when it comes to the soldering. Now you probably want to make sure all your components fit in there nice and easily. You're going to need these all connected before you power it up. Okay, screen still fits, it's looking good. The ESP. Make sure that you're not missing pinholes. Make sure you're not bending them either. It's pretty easy to get in there. Okay, and that's how it should look. Before you power it up, I would recommend setting your switch to off. Okay, I've got the battery in mind. Make sure that you get the polarity correct. So your plus is on the left, your negative is on the other side. So you should have a plus and a negative. And then that's pretty much all there is. So once you have the battery in, you're going to move your switch over. And with any luck, you will see a screen that says ESP badge test. So mine does say that. It's a little faded, but I think that's because my battery is pretty low. So my battery is probably under voltage, but it looks good. Everything's there. You can start testing things around. So I'm getting a yellow button when I did that, a red button there. Not really sure. Yeah, you can see all the, up here, each button is moving. So I think it's working. Left, right, up, down. Yep, cool. Looks like it works. So if you did not see a screen, and you did not see your ESP light up, then you might have a problem. If you saw magic smoke, you definitely have a problem.